So thank you very much all for joining us for what is now episode number 14 of Mantell Associates Network. I am joined today, excitingly, by Jan Lichtenberg, who is the CEO of InSphero and also the founder. So Jan set up InSphero just over 12 years ago now, and InSphero are a very unique organization which focus on the preclinical and the drug discovery side of technologies and testing, and they are making huge waves in the pharmaceutical space. The business is located in Switzerland and is currently situated at around 65 employees and looking to grow and grow and grow. So Jan, thank you so much for coming on. Absolute pleasure having you here. And I want to really kind of get into everything. We've spoken with many leaders, all of which have had different responses to how they found COVID, how they've adjusted to everything. Talk me through, to start off with, your thoughts on COVID-19 as a whole, and also how on earth have you managed a preclinical testing and drug discovery business through this pandemic? So yeah.
Thanks very much for the question, and thanks very much for having me on this podcast, Alessandro. It's really fantastic to share the insights, point of views, and also to listen to the other podcasts in the series. So clearly, COVID-19 has totally disrupted the way how we work. I think to some extent it put us off balance, which helped us to rebalance and to better focus on our strength and also see the weaknesses in the organization. But it's clearly a very different life than I had it imagined pretty much a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Switzerland has kind of transitioned from a poster child of managing COVID in summer to one of the countries in Europe with the highest incidence numbers, and that clearly impacts our lives, right? To some extent, life outside is much more normal than in many other countries in Europe. But we have to deal with the high incidence numbers, and then there are waves like we have right now with a lot stricter regulations. So since Monday, we have a home office requirement that has been imposed by the government. So only people who really need to be in the office or in the lab are allowed to work in the lab. And of course, we had the chance to adjust for this. It was not totally surprising, but it I think requires a lot more from the whole management team than what we had in the past years.
Incredible. And speaking of kind of the management team, the changes that have kind of come about, you mentioned about the regulations, home office. I mean, we in the UK are currently in complete lockdown. So exactly the same situation that you guys are entering, and it appears to be the same pretty much everywhere except for New Zealand. So I know where I'd rather be right now. Yeah. But it's talk to us about kind of the challenges and obstacles that you faced. I'm sure there'll be many, and how you as CEO have overcome them and been so successful during this period.
So I think, first of all, I think one of the biggest concerns that we always had was the safety of the team. And this goes, of course, both ways, right? On the one hand, as a CEO, I feel responsible for providing a safe working environment, making sure that our team and the families stay safe. But of course, also as a small company that we are in, a huge office space, the risk of having to shut down operations for a certain time due to a spread of infection in the company was imminent, and that's something that we had definitely to avoid. We reacted really early on to the threat of the pandemic, and this is, mostly kudos to my head of quality, who already put together a pandemic plan 2 years ago. I have to admit, I played with it and I said, probably we have to do this, but what are the chances, right? This is science fiction book stuff. But what it really was instrumental for us. So, at times where we were kind of still staring at China in awe and just feeling happy that this was not affecting us, we started to increase hygiene measures. We had invested quite a lot into digitalization in the past years. So no local servers, everybody working on notebooks, video conferencing software in place. So when I remember talking to one of my staff members who was on vacation for 2 weeks in February, and when she came back, she said, well, this looked all a little bit crazy. There were masks in the meeting rooms, and there was hand sanitation stuff everywhere. And I thought, you guys are overreacting, but I think it helped us to really stay ahead of the curve and making sure that we have all the measures in place. And then when we started to virtualize and to work more from home, this was, I think, not so it was not a technical challenge for us. It's an emotional challenge. It's a management challenge to keep the teams coherently working together, but it was not a technical challenge. And I think that was a big advantage for us managing that situation.
That is absolutely brilliant. And you reminded me then of when it first happened, seeing China and different countries having the masks and the hand sanitizers, and you just thought, that sounds awful. I'm really sorry about what's going on, and you're staying tuned. You're thinking, that's never going to happen here. That just would be absolutely crazy. And then all of a sudden, bam, it's affected you. And you as a founder, and me as a founder, we've got that responsibility. Even though your company is 5, 6, 7 times the size of Mantell Associates, it's still that same fear of everything. And you reacted, by the sounds of it, quicker than what we did. But I guess being directly involved in the science, you had to be able to do that. You said something interesting, which was at the start of the pandemic and through COVID, it's highlighted strengths and weaknesses in the business and areas where, what are some of the key parts that have got stronger since all of this? What are the positives for InSphero and for you that have come out of all of this?
So I think one of the biggest, I think the biggest achievements that we made as a company, as a team during that time was growing together even more than what we've been before. So at 65, you know, we are maybe not a family anymore, but we are still a tribe where we are all kind of fighting for a common goal, side by side. And I think this was always a really big strength. And one of the fears that I had was with increasing home office, that people would drift away. And actually the opposite was true. I think the team realized that we had to go the extra mile, right? We had to change some aspects of our business, and I'd be happy to talk more about that. But they also saw that as a management team, we had a plan and we had a strategy. We were very open in communication. We went the extra mile to make things good for everyone, right? We provided masks for everyone and the families at home, and it was not easy to get them, or they were super expensive. We made all of the company cars available for employees that rather prefer to drive home and back to work instead of taking public transport. So at the end of the day, simple things, but you need to have a certain thoughtfulness to implement this. And we have a small task force that has been meeting and still meeting every week to see where we need to adjust in terms of COVID-19 and what we can do. But I think these signals were received by the team, and they saw that, you know, as a company, we need to go the extra mile. We need to rely on each other. We need to make sure that we keep ourselves safe, so that we're not spreading an infection in the company. And I think this created a lot, even more coherence than we already had. And that, again, then supported us and motivated us as a management team to continue this path and to make sure that this works well. So I think this was an extremely positive aspect. The other area where we strengthened ourselves and where we grew was taking over more responsibility from our pharma and biotech customers, right? As a company, we are a little bit unique in the sense that the platform technology that we've developed, which allows us to recreate tissues or microorgans that are reflecting the function and structure of the human body in the lab, so that we can test compounds more predictively than it could be done in an animal test or in conventional in vitro testing. This platform, we exploit this platform in different ways. We have customers who are receiving these microtissues from us under a framework contract, and then they're doing testing in their own labs. We have customers that we work with in a more CRO style of business, where we take over certain tasks and that's quite transactional. But then we also have customers that work with us on a very strategic level, where we are doing drug discovery projects together, and we are also de-risking this for the customer, and we are sharing the upside if the project is successful. So what we saw was a clear shift to these more added value type of business relationships, which was our desire anyway. And in that sense, COVID has helped us to achieve this goal, because labs closed down everywhere. And we had difficulty shipping our products to customers because suddenly there were no flights and we couldn't get on these flights. The FDA reduced their staff, so there was more processing time at customs. So there were a lot of obstacles on that end, but it allowed us to have a conversation with these customers and say, why don't you let us do this? And, we know what kind of drugs you're looking for. We can build the right in vitro models to allow us to understand whether library compounds are potent or not. So let's let us do the work, because we are operational. You are in the home office. We have the expertise to do that. We have the agility to adjust our processes to do exactly that. And so we played that card, and I think that was really good for us.
That is absolutely incredible that through all of this, being able to, a lot of companies are trying to, with everything that's going on, just manage what they've got, try and get through everything and just handle kind of the task at hand and what's going on. But to be able to add a new dynamic to your offering during this and improve the service that you're providing to your clients and your customers and new business, absolutely incredible. And it's got to be said, I'm not just saying this because you're on the podcast. I absolutely mean it. I've been working in the preclinical and drug discovery space for it, not in it, but for over 4 years now. And everything from toxicology, pharmacology, oncology, all these areas is what we cover. And working with companies such as Covance, InVigo, Research RTC, many other businesses, I have to say, honestly, what InSphero offer is absolutely unique from a technology point of view, and really is incredible. I love what you said about the togetherness. I had the same worry, is when the team first went remote, it was that it's going to be almost, people aren't going to be talking to each other as much. I don't know if I was the best leader at that point. It's my first ever time in people management, really, Mantell Associates. I thought, how on earth am I going to do this? You're seeing companies letting people go left, right, and center in pharma and in life sciences. And as a headhunter, you're thinking, if they're reducing, what are we going to do? You did some amazing things as a leader, honestly, in regards to just little things like going the extra mile, as you said, for the cars, for things like that, to make people feel safe. People forget that these things cost money, and investing at a time when there's a global pandemic is a scary thing for any founder or any CEO to do, which leads me on nicely to what being a leader and being one that's grown a company from 0 to 65 people, what do you think it's taken out of you physically and mentally to get through this time period?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and there were ups and downs, right? So for me personally, especially the time 2020, March, April, maybe May, where I think we really had to react from day to day. Government regulations were changing in an unpredictable fashion as everybody tried to struggle with the pandemic. We were very urgently trying to set up projects with customers who said, we need to sign this paperwork so that we can ship compounds to you before our logistics department closes. So I think we were really in a frenzy in a way on all levels. And of course, I'm a very hands-on leader. I love to work with my teams on specific topics. It really helps me to understand what's going on and how I can best contribute. I love spending time with my customers. And so during that time, it was all about going this extra mile, but I also noticed the toll that it takes if you do that, right? So there was a time where, I got up at 4 a.m. to have the first calls with customers in Asia. And then we kind of tried to get a plan for the day, worked here in the office. And then in the evening, it was going back to US customers. And I realized that this was not healthy, right? So this was not healthy physically. It was not healthy mentally. It was not healthy from a strategic perspective, because operations take over and it's all transactional stuff that you're doing, and you don't take that moment to step back and think about, are we still doing the right things? Are we understanding what the pandemic is really doing? Is this going to be over in summer, or is this going to be over next year in summer, or is this something that we need to live with for the next 5 years? And so I think at that point, I pulled a little bit the brake, and I said, okay, I personally, for myself, I needed a bit more structure in the day, especially with the additional home office presence, where it's very easy to kind of let private life and professional life seep into each other in the wrong way. Started to pick up exercising again, because that for me is a great time to think about stuff and to reflect and to put my mind to something else than just the physical pain that I have during the exercise. So I think this was really important. It was important, I think, to really shoot at full frequency when the pandemic started, but then when it was clear that this was going to impact the way how we do business and also how our private life works, it was time to adjust again and make sure that this goes back into kind of a sustainable program.
Love that. And it's you mentioned about the exercise and it being a time to think, and something which you've gone through, which I'm yet to go through, but going through, is growing from a one-man business into a company of 65 plus, and we're currently at 18. So I'm kind of in that in-between time, and I speak to many leaders who are in the same thing, where you go from doing everything, hands-on every single area, to all of a sudden, something in general, as the business gets bigger, you need to learn more to let go. Of certain things. And then when you've got a global pandemic come, everything goes into a frenzy, like you said, and you're back on it and you're drawn back into it. But it's actually, I've read a lot of different things. I've spoken to a lot of people, a lot of different people who have said that actually you should be spending most of your day thinking about strategy, thinking about the business, thinking about how different people in the business, your team are going to be feeling, how they're going to be reacting. So I really, really liked your comment. What type of leaders and businesses actually do you think that this is exposed in a bad way?
Yeah, so there is a lot of talk about this so-called zombie companies, right? That are not on a sustainable path, but that kind of made their way anyway, and that suddenly get very much hit by the changes in boundary conditions that are imposed by the pandemic. So that's clearly something that that affects a lot of companies, especially in the startup space, where we're clearly not looking at zombie companies, but at emerging companies that are not yet profitable, that do not have a lot of liquidity to buffer the situation, that might not have the management structures and management experience to really run with this in a proper way. And I've talked to a couple of startup companies in the neighborhood who said, some of our folks never came back from the lockdown, right? So the time that they had in the home office, they started to rethink their situation, potential unhappiness with the roles or the organization that they were working for, and they just quit. And so I think whenever you put a system under stress, and this is a bit the engineer in me talking, when you put a system under stress, then you see the cracks at the weak spots, right? That's how everything works. And if the weak spots are too many, or they are so substantial that you can't fix it, then the stress test makes the system break and you can never put it back together. I think in our case, we saw the weak spots, we saw the cracks, but they were not so many and they were small enough that we could go there and fix it. And that will allow us to be even more resilient when something else comes, right? And something else could also be a big competitor that moves into our market and brings costs down beyond our capabilities to follow and so on. So I think in a way, of course, as a leader, we want a positive situation. We want to grow. We want to have happy investors, but sometimes it's necessary, or let's say helpful, to have this stress test and then to react accordingly. To your question, what type of leaders it needs? When we talk with our leadership team, then it's always kind of about the three powers, right? There's the role power that you have as a supervisor, as a line manager, as a CEO, the role power to take a decision to go in that direction, the role power to say, I don't want to work with you anymore and I'm letting you go. It's in a way, it's a strong power, but it's not really helping you in a difficult situation. Again, it's not a power that I think we should rely on too much as leaders. And then there is the knowledge power, which I think is something that's very important for a technology company like ours. Managers who know their stuff, who have the experience, who can educate their direct reports, who can challenge their direct reports, who are a role model on a scientific or technical level for the direct reports. They have a lot of respect, and this creates a lot of power. But the third power is the most important one, and that's relationship power, right?
Yes.
Being a leader who is who has empathy for the team, who knows what their situation is, especially in a lockdown. Do they have kids? Are the kids at home? What job has their life partner? Is that job endangered? Are they on furlough? How do they come to work and how do they get back? And this goes in both directions, right? And so I think at the end of the day, highly talented, very well educated people like we have on our staff, they work primarily for us because they like the culture, the company, and they like their supervisor and the leadership team of the company. And that, I think, carries a lot. As you know, in a way, still a startup, we do not have the same benefits and perks as the big pharma companies like Roche and Novartis here, not far from where we are can offer. And to be able to recruit these talented people and to retain the talented people and even have them recruiting other folks because they say, you know, this is a great place to work. I think this is a big achievement for us, but it's also a big necessity because there is a war for talents. And that's something that you're clearly aware of as a headhunter, as a recruiting company, right? It's not easy to get the right people. And especially if you work in a very competitive regional environment where people have the choices, I think building these relationships, making sure that people like to go to work every day, this is a winning concept for us. And it's at the same time, it's fun, right? It's not something that you need to spend a lot of money on. It's not something where you need to change the way how you are. Either you like it and then it's a lot of fun, or you don't like it, but then you're not really a manager in our
It's the stance that you've taken on the CEO is really similar to just what I've heard a lot of businesses that are doing well and spoken with their CEOs have come forward and called the CEO role a chief people officer position during this time in particular, or at least it's put the spotlight on that aspect of leadership. So thank you very much for going into that. And you mentioned it's exposed cracks in organizations, and pressure builds diamonds, and outside of these cracks can grow great things, which is clearly going on for you and InSphero. What upcoming things do you see in the pharmaceutical biotech space as a whole, which are particularly exciting that have come out of all of this?
So I think we see two really important trends that are going to shape the way how our customers will work and also how we want to work. The one thing is the convergence of biology, engineering, especially tissue engineering, and machine learning. I think today these are still very often kind of separate topics, right? People work with biological cells in the lab as a test system for new drugs, but this needs to be combined with the right tissue engineering, microfluidics technologies, and so on to really rebuild organ systems that reflect the human body in a predictive way in the lab. So this is kind of the first convergence that we are already doing for many years. And now we see, we really see that machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence makes a major impact in our industry, but only if it's fully integrated, right? So sometimes we talk to companies, to their AI departments, and they say, we're doing AI, our algorithms adopt automatically. We do not need to understand the disease and disease biology. The system is going to do this. So this is something that I don't believe. I think the interdisciplinary work, the interaction between experts from different fields with an openness to learn and understand enough from what's going on the other side to be able to be at the top of their game is the only strategy that's going to make this successful, right? If we think in silos and we say, we are the IT guys and you are the wet lab pipetting guys, and you do your thing, we do our thing, this is not going to work. And I think the most successful projects that we have run in this space come from this openness to interact and to learn from each other and to ask a naive question, but it makes the other groups think it's not so naive at the end of the day, right? So I think this convergence is really super important, and we are putting a lot of effort and into this, building partnerships, getting this technology into our company as well to be on top of the game here. And then the other big aspect, which is going to drive the industry, is personalized medicine. So a lot more targeted therapeutic approaches, right? So this could be really personalized in the sense that it's a cell therapy that has been designed for a specific patient, or what is going to be a bigger market share, very stratified treatments that are designed for a very specific patient population with a specific mutation, for instance, of a disease. And I think the challenges for the pharmaceutical industry here are, number one, how do you develop this really targeted approach? How do you understand the patient biology? The second one is, how can I do this in a really efficient and low-cost way? Because the more you personalize, the more you target, the smaller the market is that you are going to deliver this product to. So the return on investment is, to retain a high return on investment, you have to make sure that the investment is less than the 1 or 2 or 3 billion that people invest into a new drug today. And then the third aspect is how can you then match the right drug to the right patient. And again, in vitro testing will play a major role here. So I think it's super exciting as a human being that might need this treatment in the future. I'm so glad that we are living in a time where, we are moving from, let's say, a fairly brutal chemotherapeutic approach to cancer treatment into a more immune oncology treatment. I think our chances to survive if we are developing a tumor in our body is going to be substantially higher than it was 20 years ago, and this is amazing. But it will create new challenges for the industry, and it will create new challenges for companies like us to have the right technologies in place to help out.
That is an amazing answer, and thank you for going into all of that detail. It really is exciting as a time, and everyone that we're speaking with who has adapted or is in businesses which have adapted as well and been successful, everyone is feeling optimistic. Now, in March 2020, that was not the case. That was absolutely not. And now we're coming to the end. We've got the drugs which are coming to market, the vaccines rather, that are coming to market. Everything's exciting. Companies are diversifying. People like InSphero in your business are adding more components to what they're able to offer clients. Companies have taken the hits and hurt, but adapting, moving quicker, moving more efficiently, being able to provide higher service and better quality drugs for patients. So really exciting, and everything that you and InSphero are doing is right at the forefront of that. So thank you. I wanted to ask you from a leadership point of view, completely separate to InSphero and everything. How do you personally define success?
So for me, success is I think primarily related to the vision that we develop, and this could be the vision for our company. It could be a vision that I have for my family. It could be a vision that I have for some of the non-profit activities that I have. For me, success is when the vision is reached, and I use passive voice here because it doesn't necessarily have to be me that reached that vision, right? That made this vision a reality. So our vision for InSphero is to predict the interaction of new drugs to human patients, to help the industry to develop treatments that let us all lead healthier and better lives. So, of course, as a CEO and as a shareholder of InSphero, my hope is that we will be the one that is instrumental in reaching that vision and making this vision a reality. But as a human being, as a leader in the field, I have to say I don't really care, right? The vision in itself is relevant, right? We need a technology that allows us very quickly, very efficiently to say this is a good drug and this is not a good drug. And if one of our competitors finds a way to this holy grail, then in a way, this is still a success, and it's still a success that I and my team helped to accomplish, because we've built bits and pieces and maybe just the competition that was needed to make this happen. So for me, success is to have a vision and then to have a plan and to see this vision becoming a reality at the end of the day.
Love that. And I like what you said, that it's not actually necessarily a vision which is solely about me. To lose, like I'm sure everyone in December, getting to Christmas time, lose X amount of weight next year or whatever. It's not all about the me or the I to that group of people. Maybe it's loved ones who we work with achieving what they wanted to achieve, and therefore that brings you happiness and success. And amazing. Thank you. Final question for you, Jan, is, and I'm sure you've answered many times this part throughout this podcast, but one bit of advice that you would give to other leaders right now, looking to kind of optimize their business and their response during this, if it's still a crisis.
So I think it's let me take a two-part answer. One is into the company. I think as leaders, we need to make sure that we retain the personal contact to our team even more and even more proactively than we've been able to do this a year ago, right? So I like to talk to everybody in my company. And there were a lot of opportunities to do this at the water cooler, at the coffee machine, on the way to lunch and back. And it's these interactions that help me to stay in touch, that help me to understand what's going on, and that make me not just a CEO, but also a human being throughout everybody in the company. And now we need to pick up the phone and call somebody, or we need to arrange a video call, or we need to build other ways of having this connection. And I think this is really something that we must not forget, especially with all maybe the extra pressure that we get on making our top line revenue and making sure that our shareholders are up to date what's going on. But at the end of the day, it's about every single employee and making sure that we we are present, right? And with 65 people, I have a chance to talk to everybody, let's say at least every second week. And if it's just for 5 minutes, doesn't matter, right? But it's happening. If you have a larger organization, you need to be more in ascending mode and making sure that you take people along, that there is transparency, that they know what you're thinking about through newsletters or through video town hall meetings and stuff like that. But I think this is something that we cannot cut down right now. If rather we need to do more around that. And I think the second aspect, but it's very much related, is the customer contact. I really love to spend time with customers. I traveled a lot. I spent a lot of time also on the private level with customers, to go for a drink or to visit a museum in the town where they live. And I saw this as so enriching for myself. But at the same time also building such good relationships that even, if something doesn't work exactly how it should be in a scientific project, and in biology this can always happen, but there is a much deeper understanding of how a person works than just through video calls. And so compensating for that is not really an easy thing. And I started to write letters by hand with a pen that I had to dig out very deep out of the drawer, a fountain pen. And but this kind of personal touch, I think that I really like to get, and that I'm also very happy to pass out to others. And I think it's these qualities that sometimes get lost a little bit in the hectic days that we have, and the super optimized workflows that we can now dig out again, and we should use.
It really is those human touches, and both of what you mentioned. And actually, before we started recording, one of the first things you said to me was, God, I really miss traveling, seeing clients, going abroad. And me too. And I think a lot of people are feeling it. But what you said about the 5, even if it's just 5 minutes in a company of 65 people, that you can give to your team once every 2 weeks, make it count and still do it. Because people right now, a lot of them are at home, locked away with their families, which is a good thing for most, but for some people it can be really hard, especially not all living. I mean, I live in London. The majority of London is probably studio flats, 1-bedroom rooms, people living in these conditions, obviously not in the pharmaceutical space, a lot of them, but it's hard, and there's going to be a lot of people in that same boat. And I really love your outlook towards them and to customers as well. So Jan, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your journey at InSphero, being the CEO and founder and board member of the business, and everything that you've achieved, and really just an insight into leadership in the business. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having me on the podcast, Alessandro. Take care. Bye-bye.